restroom. Ada yang mahal tu for split second. Mana dia? Datang ke?
Dia need paper and pen kat situ. Lepas tu nanti tunggu Daniel punya signal. Tunggu Daniel punya signal. And then we're gonna start ni. He's gonna come from the left side.
Left side.
You need to tell me. I'm short, I can't see.
Where's that? I don't see that. Macam rockstar je. Waiting. Things outside.
Dia cakap dia nak paper and pen at the restroom. We'll be talking at the restroom.
Washroom.
It's a paper.
Oh, that's what I said. I said, oh, it's a restroom. It's like, what? It's a podium. I think he's here.
Tengok kiri ke kanan ni?
I see everyone lining up. Who's coming?
You can fanboy.
Huh?
You can fanboy.
I just want to picture him. I'm very sad. Very sad Kaylin got a picture of him and then he didn't. This Kaylin is a bodyguard kan. So you got to serve him the food. Take a selfie je. Suddenly, due to unforeseen circumstances, have a move.
You lah, you flip. You nanti flip home.
Huh?
You nanti flip home.
Fashion today or what?
Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you could still keep calm. Stay calm.
Go ahead, tell some jokes.
You tell something.
I don't have any good jokes.
No, I don't know.
I know one. Knock. Wait. Why did Jenny fall off the swing?
Because you're stupid.
No, because she got no arms. Knock.
Alex, sad.
Knock.
Who's that?
Not Jenny.
Not Jenny.
Still no arms. Idea, weh.
No, I think that left.
Why?
So, but they're lining up. They're all at the door there. The longer you wait, the more nerve-wracking tension it is.
Inform you. Once I get the message, I'll inform you. You immediately.
Bruce.
Oh, don't say it yet. Don't say it yet. Hopefully we'll get it done. Wait. Go.
No.
Yeah, it's definitely. Go.
Ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, please welcome to the stage a man who needs no further introduction, Malaysia's 4th Prime Minister and our keynote speaker for today, Yang Amat Berbahagia Tun Dr. Mahathir Mohamad.
Cannot allow. There's security in my office.
Testing. Hello, everyone. We have come to one of the highlights of today, Projek Amanat Negara, first time in Manchester, 11th installment of PAN. And to my left, we have a man who needs no introduction, to Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. We had the privilege of hosting him today. And first of all, I want to thank everyone for coming. And I don't want to waste any more time. Tun, dipersilakan to give a keynote. Thank you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum and a very good afternoon to everyone. Mr. Chairman and boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. Firstly, I would like to say thank you very much for this invitation to talk to this group of Malaysian students in the UK. I am flattered that so many of you want to attend this session. I hope I will not disappoint you. I have been asked to talk on Malaysian youth and globalization. Now, let me begin with a little bit of history. Globalization started many centuries ago when Columbus discovered America and Vasco da Gama rounded the Cape of Good Hope and discovered the East. Of course, after that, somebody actually sailed around the world, proving that the world is round, that you can go westwards, on, and yet reach a place in the East. Since then, people think in terms of the globe, of the world being a round planet, and that there are people other than the people that we know. Because before that, people live in compartments. They live, the Europeans live in Europe, the Asians in Asia, the Africans in Africa, and the unknown Americans living in America before that. But after the discovery by Columbus and Vasco da Gama, we have to accept that we live in a globe, in a round planet, where people of different ethnic origins, different races live on this globe, and that they can communicate with each other. Before that, they could not. So once they begin to communicate with each other, we had to make adjustments to each other. But in this process, the Europeans dominate. They were the ones who traveled the most, and they came with their culture and their way of thinking and their habits, some of which are bad habits. The bad habits of the Europeans are about being acquisitive, wanting to take what belongs to others. And so we find that the world became more and more Eurocentric, simply because the Europeans were the most traveled people, and they were found everywhere. And wherever they go, they brought along their ideas, their culture, their way of thinking, their systems, their methods, so that eventually the whole world looked to Europe for new ideas, new ways of doing things, and new kinds of thinking. And we became so Eurocentric that we have not been able to free ourselves from European thinking since then. Through the centuries, we thought about Europe and the way things should be done, including the systems of government, the ideologies, the ideas, the moral values, etc., from Europe began to permeate the whole world. And today, of course, we are seeing the process still going on, despite the fact that the Europeans had lost largely their empires. They have been able to win back their empires through the minds of people. Basically, we are still colonized in our thinking. We think along the lines that the Europeans think, and in a way, European colonization and empires still live today. And we are very much influenced by their thinking and their ideas. Most of these ideas are very good. They introduce systems of government, they introduce ideologies, a lot of value system, etc., including, of course, their belief in freedom. This is very important to them. This was first enunciated, although it was started before that, it was enunciated during the French Revolution, when they talk about freedom, equality, and brotherhood. And the stress was on freedom. At that time, freedom was quite limited. It was to replace the kind of authoritarian rule by their monarchs, by their kings, that people should be free to shape their lives, their political lives, their systems of government themselves. That the rule should be the rule of the people, by the people, for the people. And this was a great idea, and I think we all should accept it, and we did in fact accept it, that the best system of government is the rule of the people, by the people, for the people. And in order to achieve this, we must have freedom. Fairly limited freedom. Freedom just to participate in the political life of the society in which we live. But gradually, the word freedom was applied to other things as well. We need to be free from all things that restrict us, that becomes a constraint to our way of thinking and our behavior. We felt that there were many barriers. There were religious barriers, there were moral barriers, there were ideas that restrict seemingly our freedom, and we put emphasis on freedom. And because of that, we wanted to do away with religious inhibitions. And you see in Europe that religion has been relegated to the back burner. It's no longer something that influences the thinking of people. For most of them do not think about religion anymore. They have become, if not atheistic, at least they were non-committal on religious beliefs and constraints. But that was not enough. Besides religion, we have moral values. And moral values also seem to be restrictive. For example, they insist that there are men and women, and that men and women are endowed with different qualities, and that they should behave differently. Largely, there was this thinking that men were superior to women, that women were dependent on men, and therefore women were relegated to the kitchen. And the women began to ask, why should we be in the kitchen alone? Why can't we do other things? And as you know, the women started their struggle to gain the right to vote, the franchise, just the right to vote. That's all they were asking for. And it seems that it was very logical and very correct. And eventually, the women were allowed to vote with the men. That was a great victory for the women. But then, why were women not the same as men, do not have the same rights as men? Not only to do what is legitimate, but also the illegitimate things. In those days in Europe, the rich often had mistresses. All the kings and the dukes and the lords, the rich people had mistresses, but of course the mistresses were women. Why cannot women have men, even if they were married? Well, you must understand, it is not equal. There's no freedom, there's no equality between men and women. Men can have mistresses, why not women? So the struggle went on, and eventually, of course, the women also gained that kind of freedom. But still there were restrictions. For example, why do you have to marry? Why do you have to marry? What's wrong with just, well, you like each other, you go to bed together. What's wrong with that? There's nothing wrong. Eventually, you go to the formality of having a marriage, a big feast, kunduris and all that. Why should you have that? If you like each other, yeah, well, you stay together, you beget children. But then that means that you have done away with the institution of marriage. From then on, you go on to say that why should a family consist of a father, mother, and children? Father and mother being married. What's wrong with having children before marriage? That can also make up a family. So, just about anybody can have a family, just live together, beget children. Or you can't get children, you can always borrow someone or adopt someone. But still we are not free. We are not free because why should men marry women? What's wrong with men marrying men? And women marrying women? And so today you see in this Eurocentric world, this creeping idea that all these restrictions must be done away with. We should allow ourselves to do just what we like. And when we do what we like, then we will be free. And so today you see men marrying men. We are going through ceremonies, even officiated by religious personages, and women marrying women. This is great. You agree with me? You do. Thank you. Isn't it great? But if the whole society is made up of people where men would marry men and women would marry women, how do they beget children? I think they won't last for very long. After 2 generations, there will be no children. Can men get children with another man? Or women with another woman? No, they cannot. Of course, they can adopt. But then to adopt, you have to have somebody marrying a man, marrying a woman. But if nobody marries a woman, a man marries a man, and a woman marries a woman, in the whole society, there will be no children, and that will be the end of the story. But today, what is important is freedom. No restriction to your seeking pleasure. You must enjoy life and forget about restriction. Of course, these are religious restrictions. Then there are moral codes. And then we have adats and things like that. We should do away with all these things. Well, if we continue to be Eurocentric and you follow Europe slavishly, that is what is going to happen to us. You're all young people. I'm too old for all this. You're all young people. Are you going to be that slavish in being Eurocentric? The world has become a globe. It is a village. It is a small village. You can reach London in 12 hours. Some people treat London as if it was, Seberang Perak or somewhere. They feel like going, they just pack, don't even bother to pack. They just jump on a plane and they are here. So we cannot isolate ourselves anymore. If before we were Eurocentric, today we are even more Eurocentric than ever before. In other words, your minds are still colonized. You cannot think for yourself. You have to follow what is done here, irrespective. Because Well, the West are the people who come up. There was not a gun, it's quite all right. I think the West has contributed much towards this world. They came up with ideas, their scientists invented things, they were able to fly, they can go to the moon, they can go to the International Space Station, they can do things which we could not do. And I think they are great. But do we have to follow everything that they do, including their political system? Yes, I believe that democracy is the best political system. It is a system which allows us to govern ourselves. But of course, that is what we say. It's not possible to do that. We have to have someone to govern us. We have to elect representatives to form governments to govern us. But if you elect representatives, would they be able to govern us if they keep on fighting each other, quarreling with each other, not agreeing on anything? Obviously, they cannot. So we devise a government by the majority. We still say it is democratic. A government by the majority means the minority has no say in the government. So when you find the minority has no say in the government, you say, well, we should give them some say. They should be able to somewhat modify the majority's viewpoint. Well, they should be able to demonstrate, for example, take to the streets and demonstrate. And you can bring down the government, as happens to the Ukraine government today. That is freedom. You want to have freedom to demonstrate. That is fine. But if you have governments by demonstration, is that really democracy? Because the demonstrators would be a minority. No matter how many there are of them, the government is elected by the majority. So those who are opposed to the government must be in the minority. And if the minority is allowed to bring down the government elected by the majority, then there is no democracy. But we say we must have demonstrations because it is a part of human rights. Yes, we should have human rights. But is human rights unlimited? Should there not be some limit to the exercise of human rights? There must be. Because if you have no limits, then we will do everything that we want to without regard to the effect on other people. You have to think about other people. Even though you are practicing human rights, you are exercising your freedom, but your freedom must be constrained, must be limited by the need to respect the rights of others. If you don't respect the rights of others, then there will be anarchy. All of you are very, very well dressed. But somebody decides that they should come here naked. Because it is their right. You cannot question, it is their right. What kind of society would that be? This exercise of human rights. So human rights must be limited to a certain extent. Not totally limited to the point where you have no rights at all. It must be limited by your need to respect other people's rights. If you don't respect other people's rights, then they have a right not to respect your right. And if you do something that hurts them, and they are in the majority, they are stronger, then they can restrict you. They can throw you in jail under the ISA, for example. No more ISA now. You know, we were told ISA was very bad. Well, who told us ISA was very bad? It's the very people who introduced the ISA in Malaysia. The British introduced ISA in Malaysia. And now they tell us it's very bad. And we should get rid of it. And we got rid of it. But then they now practice the same thing. They arrest people. You read recently how they arrest people and chuck the people out of the country. Well, that is ISA. See what is happening in Guantanamo Bay and in many other places. They have their ISA, of course they call it by another name. And we are taken in by their arguments, and we think that they are holding on to these great, noble aims of having a free society, but it is not free. There is no such thing as an absolutely free society. If you want to have a society at all, you must accept some limitations to your freedom. If you want to live alone on an island in the South Seas, and you want to walk around naked, that's fine. Nobody is there. You can do that. But if you want to live in a society, you have to respect society. You have to respect the rules and regulations, the religion, and the moral values of society. What I'm trying to say is that for the youth of tomorrow, you will have to think for yourself, not just slavishly follow what happens in the West. We are still Eurocentric. We can still borrow from them good ideas, good techniques, good technology, etc. But we should have an independent mind. We should have to think by ourselves as to what is good for us. If the youth of tomorrow, Malaysian youth of tomorrow, slavishly follow Western ideas, Western values, Western practices, then you are not really free. You are slaves to them. You are slaves to them. To be free means to be able to think for yourself. Our country is a different kind of country. It is a multiracial country. It is more multiracial than any other country in the world. I say this because in Malaysia, you keep the ethnicity of your group. You don't say that, well, I am a Malaysian and therefore I'm not a Chinese, I'm not a Malay, I'm not an Indian. You are Malaysian, but in our system, you retain your culture, your language, and your ethnicity. And yet you have to live together. Now, living together, people of different culture, different race, different religion, different language, who want to live together, they must learn to tolerate each other. If they don't learn how to tolerate each other, or they try to grab everything for themselves, then there will be conflicts and there will be instability in our country. And when our country becomes unstable, then you will not be around here because we will have no money to send you abroad. Your parents, even if they are rich, will have no money because they can't make money in Malaysia. They'll have to migrate somewhere else. But if we want to live in peace and harmony in Malaysia, we have to have our own thinking, our own ideas, our own codes, moral codes, so that we will not be beholden to the West or to anybody else as to what we want to do. In Malaysia, we have to live together, whether we like it or not. There are Malays, there are Chinese, there are Indians, Ibans, Kadazans, Dusun, etc. We have to learn to be tolerant of each other. But we have to look after the interests of each other as well. It wouldn't do to have one group extremely rich and the other group extremely poor. That will lead to conflict. Whatever other people say about equal opportunities, we may have to discriminate to correct the imbalance. If we don't do that, then there will be conflicts, confrontation, even riots, and all kinds of dislocation of the society. We have to accept that. That is what Malaysia is about. Malaysia is fortunate in that for 50 years we have been stable and we have grown. Nobody can deny that Malaysia became developed only after independence, not during the British time. When we became independent in 1957, the per capita income was only $350. Of course, $350 in those days was worth much more. But that was the per capita income of Malaysia. Today, it is about $11,000. In a period of 50 years or more, we have enriched the country and enriched the people. Of course, there are still some poor people. They probably will benefit from BRIM and the like. But most of us are able to afford what we could not afford before. Certainly, you will not be studying here if we stay at the level we were when we became independent. Once we became independent, we were masters of ourselves and we adopted our own strategies. Yes, some influence coming from the West. We don't deny that. But we wanted a country that is stable, peaceful, and developing very fast. We have to develop fast to catch up with the others. We have this great ambition to become a developed country by 2020. To do that, we need to have a stable country. Then we can do all those things that we have done, including build mega projects, waste money on mega projects, etc. You know, there was some prime minister who wasted money on building roads and railway and KLIA and all that. If you move around this country, you see a lot of statues of great heroes. The people who fought in wars and killed a lot of people, they come back as the heroes and they have statues for them. Unfortunately, the ungrateful people of Malaysia have not built a statue for this Prime Minister. Instead, of course, he was accused of wasting public money on useless things like North-South Highway, KLIA, Port Kelang, Port Tanjung Pelepas, and all kinds of nonsense. See? He has wasted money. So when other people came along, they tried to take corrective action. Well, I will not comment on the corrective action or the result of that corrective action, because you are the intelligentsia of Malaysian society. You are the young people who will shape the future of our country. It's up to you to make a judgment as to what is right and what is wrong. Do you do something when you have power? You do something to enrich yourself? Do you enjoy a very great life because you have the power to do so? That is for you to judge. I'm not going to influence or undermine you in any way, because you are the intelligent ones in our country. Malaysia is very fortunate. Despite being a multiracial, multi-religious, multicultural, multilingual country, we have been able to grow and provide a good life for our people. Do you continue with that growth? Do you continue with creating a stable society? Or do you opt for change? And there are some people who believe in change. Well, we need to see changes, of course, but you have to be able to decide whether the changes that you yearn for, you plan for, will be good for you or not. Humankind has been given the faculty of thinking. Animals don't usually think. They probably react to experience, but humans can think. They can see the future. Not correctly, of course, but you know tomorrow you're going to have breakfast, isn't it, in the morning? Well, at least you know the future. You see, and you expect to pass in your exam, if you study, of course, and to go home and hope to have a job. So you can see into the future. It's how far you see into the future that is important. And it's not too difficult. It's not difficult to see the future and to work for a better future. It's not too difficult. Or you want to have change because you want to change. That's all. Doesn't matter whether it is for good or for bad, but you want change. That doesn't reflect well on the capacity to think or even to see the future. You know, we have grown for the past 50 years plus under a system that everybody likes, but nevertheless it has delivered. You can decide to continue, to make some modification, of course, or you may decide to change. Now, we are basically a capitalist society, though sometimes we do things that do not reflect our capitalist ideology. We sometimes nationalize companies like Petronas and the like. But by and large, we are a capitalist society. We believe in people doing business, generating wealth, and we tax their wealth. That is our way of doing things. But maybe somebody will say, well, why should we do this? Why don't we do what the Europeans do? Tax the people out of their wealth and set up a welfare state. Everybody will get free money from the government. You have no money, the government gives you money. So that is a good change, of course. But think carefully what would happen. You know, in this country, they have the unemployment benefit. where does the money come to give the benefit, to pay the unemployed people? It comes from the taxes collected by the government. The taxes cannot be collected from poor people. It must be collected from rich people. The more rich people there are, the more tax you collect, the more money you have to give to the unemployed. But the strange thing is that when things are doing well, when business is good and the country is prosperous, there will be only a few people who will be unemployed. And therefore, unemployment benefit doesn't cost the government much. Yet when the country is prosperous, that is the time when the government has lots of money. However, when there is a financial crisis like now, with a lot of people unemployed, and people were not making as much profit as they used to, the government could collect or can collect only a small amount of taxes, but has to expand in terms of unemployment benefit on a great deal more people. So you can see the situation that you have put yourself into. You promise to help the unemployed people at a time when you have money, but the number of unemployed increase at a time when you don't have money. So you find yourself unable to meet your commitment. If you think forward, you will see this. But when you are prosperous, you think you're going to be prosperous forever, and you decide you are going to be generous, but during bad times, even if you want to be generous, you just cannot. We cannot just give money to people. We must have people working to generate their own wealth. And those who know how to make more money, they should be taxed for a rainy day, for the day when things are not doing so well. That is forward thinking. If you are thinking as at this moment, your idea will be different from what would happen 10 years down the line or 20 years down the line. Now, Malaysia can change. Well, it is good that you should change. But change must be judicious. You must change after calculating things thoroughly. We know, for example, that the population of Malaysia will grow. That was the basis of our thinking before. We knew Malaysia, when it became independent, had only 5 million people. But they were growing. We were growing at the rate of 2.5% per year. And therefore, the numbers of people in Malaysia would increase. Now, when number of people increase, they need to eat more, they need to have more clothing, they need to travel more, they need to sustain themselves. So what is needed? Jobs. You have to think about how to create jobs. And when you create jobs, people make money. All along the way, people will make money and government will tax and therefore have more money. And all the while, the population is growing, creating wealth, and the government becomes wealthier and is able to provide more for the people. When you think about growth, you can see the future. It's not too difficult. I'm quite sure that today our population is just under 30 million. My target was 70 million. But that was in 2100, not now. Some people thought that I wanted a population of 70 million now. And their answer was to have 4 wives. if you have 4 wives, the numbers will not increase, because some of these people, men are not capable, and 4 wives won't give them very many children. But what is more important is that in any society, including the Malaysian society, 50% are men, 50% are women. When one man marries one woman, there is a balance. But when one man marries 2, somebody on the other side is not going to have a wife. When one man marries 4, then 3 men on the other side will have no wives. That will create a lot of imbalance and a lot of social problems. So I think that in order to increase the population to 70 million, we should have only 1 wife each. I am at the moment being accused of not being very Islamic. I am anti-hadith. I'm sure you read in your Facebook or whatever how I have been condemned for being anti-hadith. I am not. Now, on this question of polygamy, if you read the Quran, it says there that you can marry 2, 3, or 4. But if you cannot be just to your 4 wives, marry only 1. So the injunction in the Quran is to marry 1. Because it says in the next ayat that no man can be just to a woman. Obviously, a man cannot be just to a woman, he cannot be just to 4 wives, so he should marry only 1. But of course, those people who interpret the Quran, who actually want to have many wives, they read only that part which says marry 2, 3, or 4. But if you care to read the whole thing, you will find that marry 2, 3, or 4, but if you cannot be just to them, marry only 1. And the Quran says you cannot be just to women. So the injunction is to marry only 1. Now if you marry only 1, the chances of our reaching 70 million in the year 2060, not 2,100, but 2060, we will have our 70 million. Now when you think of a country having 70 million people, you know what their needs are. You know, our needs today is so much, but 70 million must have bigger needs. So we need to train people. We need more educated people. We need more people with the right kind of mind to ensure that the country will continue to grow and develop. So looking into the future is not very difficult. You don't need a visionary. Sometimes people call me a visionary. I have the same, I need glasses. I cannot see that far. But to predict the future is fairly easy. And to ensure that the future brings a good life to us is also quite easy. It is about good administration, good policies, uncorrupt leaders, and the like. I won't detail so many things because I don't think it is proper for me to talk about corruption, because I myself was labeled as corrupt, so I'm very rich, you know. I came here in a private plane. Unfortunately, it doesn't belong to me. Yeah, but I am sure that the future of this country, of our country, will be great, provided we accept the fact that we are a multiracial country, that no single race can rule the country by itself, that all of them should share in the exercise of power in our country and in the distribution of wealth in our country. If we accept that in our country, a multiracial country, that we should share our country among ourselves, we can be sure the country will be stable and you will be able to grow the country with your skills and your knowledge which you are here to acquire. So, what is the role of Malaysian youth in a globalized world? Firstly, do not be slavish. Do not just follow the West simply because they are the West. Try and get away from this idea that the world is Eurocentric and whatever comes from Europe you must copy. Try to be independent, to reject what is wrong and to accept what is right. We should not be very fixed in our minds about anything until, of course, we have studied the thing thoroughly and discover whether it is good or not. Yes, our country must remain democratic, but our democracy must not be unlimited. Our democracy must respect the right of the majority to rule the country, the right of the minority to protest, but not to the point of overthrowing the government. You know what is happening in Thailand? An elected government, but Bangkok is shut down because of demonstration. You want Kuala Lumpur to shut down? That's your choice. You see what is happening in Egypt, in Cairo. You see what is happening in Syria. Of course, you see what is happening in Kiev, in Ukraine. You have a choice. Either abuse democracy to the point of destroying yourself because it is European, or limit yourself, hold yourself back, stand back and study the consequences, the things that are happening in other countries where democracy is abused, and then make your own decision. I'm not going to tell you what decision to make, but I'm quite sure you're intelligent enough to make the right choice. So that is the role of Malaysian youth in the future. I will not repeat because I'm sure you are listening to what I say, and I hope that I think there will be question and answers after this. Where you are not clear or not happy about, where you want to embarrass me and things like that, you can do so. You can do so. Fortunately, I'm no longer the Prime Minister, and we live in a free country, and I'm allowed to say, or at least I allow myself to say what I like. Thank you.
Testing. Thank you very much, Tun. So now it's going to be a Q&A session. Mics will be placed on each side. First of all, I just want to set some ground rules. Obviously, please keep your questions short, and please make sure you state your name, your university, and then your question. If you go over more than 2 minutes, and if I feel like you guys are going round and round, I will politely interject. And so if you guys can queue up right now at these 2 microphones, that'd be great. Okay, so I've spoken to Tun, and Tun said he wants to answer 1 question at a time. So please keep your questions short, so because then we can go through the whole line. I will alternate between both sections of the hall. Okay. So I'll take the question from the lady on my left.
Hi, my name is Safira. I'm studying in Newcastle. So I'd like to ask for your opinion on history. You talk about us looking into the future, but should we not also make it essential for us to look at our history so that we can reflect on the path that have led us here? And if you agree, what would you suggest would be the best way for us to do this? Thank you.
Well, I like to say, to quote George Santayana, who said that those who forget the lessons of history will be condemned to repeat their mistakes over and over again. And therefore, we should look into our background, our history. But don't look only a few years back. Look the whole way through, right up to the time when we were colonized by the Portuguese, way back in 1511. And see what happened after that. The Malays lost confidence. And they could not think for themselves. They think that the Europeans are great. And so they follow slavishly what comes from the West. But they could not bring themselves together, unite, and struggle against the British. But in 1946, when the British proposed that Malaysia should be a colony, not a protected state, it should be a full colony of Britain. For once we realized we were going to lose everything, we came together and we struggled against the British and regained our independence. So that part, you must know, the people who struggled, the people who united, the people who gave up things, sacrifice in order to retain Malaysia as an independent country. And then from then onwards, you study what happened. A lot of countries became independent together with us. But what happened to them? Go and see them. Take leave and go and live in some of these countries which became independent after the last war. Where are they now? Have they done well? Are they better off than we are? So it is good to look behind and to make comparison. Not to listen to the Western press. Of course, the Western press is a controlled press. It's never a free press. It's controlled by someone. It may be Rupert Murdoch or Rebecca Brooke or whatever. They control the press. And they tell us, oh, you don't have a free press. Our press are much more free than the press here or in America. They are controlled by certain interested individuals. So study the past, but study it carefully and with sincerity, honest assessment of what happened to us. And then we can make an evaluation as to what is good and what is bad. And with that, we can plan for our future. Thank you.
I'll take a question from gentleman, right?
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh, and good afternoon. My name is Muhammad Alif, and I'm studying here in Manchester, doing management. And this questions, I think, is a bit personal to you, because you are the face of Malaysia. Tun Dr. Mahathir is the face of Malaysia. If you go to any place, if you ask anyone, once you introduce yourself as a Malaysian, people will say, oh, Mahathir. That's the first thing that people will ask me. And then you created so many things. But then again, there are certain events which people label you as a dictator. There are certain events, Projek IC, Sabah, and Oops Lalang, all those kind of things. And people will have the idea that you are a dictator in our country. I just want to have your thoughts on that, but I know you are not a dictator. I know you are not a dictator. But then again, yeah, that's it. I just want to know your thoughts on this issue. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, thank you for
reminding me that I was a dictator. Remember how many people I executed? I executed and I hanged, I jailed so many people, thousands and thousands of people. In Israel, they jail at any one time 10,000 Palestinians. Of course, I did that too. As to the IC in Sabah, these people have been living in Sabah for more than 30 years. Their children were born in Sabah. They were brought up in Sabah. They speak the language, local language. Why is it wrong to give them citizenship when we are prepared to give citizenship to a lot of other people who have been in Malaysia for only 12 years, can't even speak Malay? They all demand to be given citizenship. The people in Sabah have been there. Whether they are Bajaus or Filipinos or Indonesians, they have been there, they have been working there, they speak the local language, and yet because they are not citizens, their children could not go to school. Is that fair? Is that right? People who come to this country, I met our old cook, Ahmad. Ahmad was from Kedah. He lives here. He's now permanently here. He told me that he's given some allowance by the British government. You know, the British government was extremely fair to him. He likes it here because he gets lodging and food. I don't know where, and he said he can vote in the election. That is much more than we do for the people who live in Malaysia for 30 over years. But somebody wants to make a political issue of this. They don't quite like these people. We don't like foreigners who come steal into our country. We're trying to send them back. But these people are not the same. These people have been there more than 30 years, and you deny them citizenship. And as far as I'm concerned, they deserve to be given citizenship. If that is wrong, then a lot of things are wrong. Then the other one is about, what's the second one that you said I did? Salang. Yeah. Those people became violent. They go against the government in a violent way. Obviously, we have to put a stop to violence because there are other people's lives around. They want to live in peace. They don't like all this disruption in their lives. We have to think about them. They have to make a living. Some of them are very poor. They prepare some food this morning and sell that morning, and that was their income. They couldn't sell the food, and that's the end of them. You have to consider them also, not the people who create all these disturbances. So governments sometimes have to make unpleasant decisions. And during my time, I made a lot of unpleasant decisions. Thank you.
Azam on my left.
Assalamualaikum, peace be upon you. I would like to ask you about Bumiputra policies. I think this question is pertinent to all Malaysians today, is at the heart of the unity of our nation and our stability. So my question is, should this policy remain for a very, very long time, or is there something, what is the justification for us to have Bumiputra policies? Thank you.
Azam, can you just explain your name and your university too?
Oh yes, my name is Azam, I'm from LSE. Thank you very much.
Well, we do have the Bumiputra policy, the NEP, for example, but it has been modified, and along the way, as we achieve some results, we can do away with some of the methods that we use. But I feel that equality in the distribution of wealth is extremely important in any society. If you look at England, for example, there was a time when the rich lords of the manor had all the wealth, and the workers had nothing. What happened? The workers went on strike, they rebelled, and they forced the government to, well, to treat them better, give them more wages, shorter working hours, all kinds of welfare benefits. Why? It's because of the disparity between rich and poor. In Russia, of course, there was this same disparity, and it ended up with the Tsar of Russia being killed. Now, do we want this kind of violence in our country? I think we want to have peace in this country. We have to make sacrifices. We have to give up something. We have to make sure that the poor have some opportunity to get out of their poverty. We want to give more poor people the scholarships and things like that. But people say, why do you base it on race? Well, the disparity is between races. You cannot deny them. Because in our country, we are Malaysians, but we still cling to our ethnic origins. And the difference between the different ethnic origins is very obvious. Just go to Kuala Lumpur today. Look at the buildings. Look at the housing estates. I stay in the mines. That was one of the upmarket housing estate. Not very many Malays there, because they cannot afford. Or do you want to have a Malaysia where people are divided not only by race, but also by their wealth? You know, when you have that kind of situation, the country will not be stable. I insist that some degree of favoritism, some degree of favoring the ethnic group which is poor is important. But then, of course, we are accused of discrimination, of being unfair. Is it really unfair? Have we done an audit as to who owns much of the wealth of the country? You just go and look at the buildings, at the houses, and you will know who owns all this rich land and rich wealthy houses. We don't want to have disparities like that because it's not healthy. So as far as I am concerned, we need to continue to some extent the NEP policy. But of course, some people feel ashamed that they should be favored. Well, if they are ashamed, don't allow yourself to be favored. Give up your scholarship and things like that. But of course, they are not about to do that. They come back after being qualified and say, oh, this should be stopped because it's not fair. Well, that's fine. After they cross the bridge, burn the bridge. And see, don't let others cross it. So as far as I'm concerned, I think we should continue with this policy until we achieve the target we have set for ourselves. Thank you.
Gentleman on my right.
Assalamualaikum, my dear Tun. Well, I don't usually tremble, but when I do, it is in front of the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister at least. Yeah, my question would be...
Sorry, name and institution.
Sorry, my name is Nick Harris, Nick Pena, and I'm from the University of Manchester. And my question would be to complement the previous question from Azam Yani regarding policy about Bumiputra. Personally, I believe in that status quo actually is a hindrance, and it is actually a setback even for Malays themselves and Malaysia in general. So even though that you have commented a lot on to actually narrow up the disparity between the richest and the poor, but what about the non-Bumiputra who's living in poverty? What about Chinese in Pedalaman Sarawak? So that's it, I think. Thank you very much.
Well, if you study carefully, they are not completely ignored. They also were given opportunity. But if you want to make a correction, you have to give more to the less favored people than to people who already achieved something. One of the things that happened to me during my visits as Prime Minister to UK, I met a lot of Chinese students. I asked them, what are you doing here? Or they are studying here. And how do you sustain yourself, maintain yourself here? And they say, well, my parents paid for my education. They are doing quite well at home, etc., etc. But obviously, there are Chinese students whose parents are not able to send them abroad. What I did was to start a twinning arrangement in Malaysia, where Malaysian universities can twin with foreign universities, and students can go to a Malaysian university where they have to spend less money for 2 years before going on to get their degree in a foreign university. That enabled a lot of not so rich Chinese parents to ensure that their children get an education. And indeed, if you go and examine all these private universities today, there are as many private universities as there are government universities. 90% of them, the students are Chinese and a few Indians. So they have benefited by a government policy planned for them. In fact, their numbers are very, very big, excepting that the government does not want to count because it may make the Malays very angry. Because actually there are less Malay students than there are non-Malay students, because non-Malay students could afford to go to the private universities, which are actually more expensive than government universities. We have done our best to look after the welfare of the Chinese. But of course, if you insist that the poor Chinese must be made rich first before you attend to the poor Malays, then you are going to have a problem of perpetuating the disparity that we see in our society. Thank you.
Right. The lady on my left, name, institution, question. Thank you.
Hi, Tun. I'm Santana. I am from the University of Sheffield. I am doing economics and politics. And I just wanted to say that, first of all, you are the reason why I'm doing politics. So thank you very much for giving me the inspiration. And for my question, I wanted to ask you, okay, this might sound very bad. So when you were Prime Minister, we had minimal to zero racial issues. Everybody was happy, or to be said, they were scared of you. So now it's becoming so bad. I am from Kedah, and it's such a peaceful state. And now it's like it's either the Malays and the Indians are fighting, or the Malays and the Chinese are fighting. And what do you think that the current government is doing wrong that you did? Somehow they don't practice it anymore.
Well, after I stepped down, the government which succeeded me decided to be liberal. And at the same time, of course, there were things that were done which was not right. I wouldn't enumerate them, but they were not right. And the people find that the government is no longer running the country well. Most probably the government is running the family well. So a lot of people became disillusioned with the government. And if I may say so, I'm quite sure there are DAP people here also. DAP saw an opportunity here to play up racial issues. They pointed out that only Malays get scholarship, only Malays get job, only Malays get this. So this kind of hacking on the Malays getting everything works on the mind of the Chinese. And then in the last election, they told these Chinese people, this is your chance, kali inilah. This is the time for you to seize not only economic power, but also political power. They told this, so much so that the Chinese, some MCA people also went over to their side because they really believe that now the Chinese can rule the country without having to bother about the Malays. Of course, the Prime Minister would still be a Malay, but he will be in the pocket. You see, so it is possible for this to happen in Malaysia. And people become so racist that you cannot correct them at all. If you explain that this is racist, they call you a racist. I have been labeled a racist, and yet during my time, nobody called me a racist. I was there for 22 years. Everybody worked together. Every time I had an election, I had two-thirds majority. Even in 1999, when the black eye caused a lot of Malays to be disappointed with me. You see? Why did they support me? It's because I was fair. To the extent that I was fair to all races. The Chinese became rich during my time. If you like to make a study, you can make a study. Who are the rich Chinese? When did they become rich? To the point where now they can go all over the world, build hotels, and own lots of property, even in London. They can even run the water supply in UK, for example. It was done during my time. To say that I discriminated against the Chinese is sheer nonsense. I made provision for the Chinese students to have a university education. I helped the Indians too. But the Indians also benefited from during the time. But now they say they are going to be liberal, and they created this idea that now one race, without sharing with the others, can run the country. And that is why today we have a lot of racist sentiments, racist feelings, racist statements in the media, both the electronic media and the internet and all that. I'm sorry that this happened, because I had hoped that when I stepped down, that at least some of my policies would be carried through. But people wanted change, and that's the change that they get. It's not my fault, sorry.
I'll take a question from Diana. And just a note to all people, everyone's going to ask questions. We have 10 minutes left. So if you want to ask questions, please get everyone to ask as short as possible. Thank you.
Assalamualaikum, Tun. My name is Diana. I'm from Diana Muhammad Nasir from the London School of Economics and Political Science. My question is in regards to the vision that you introduced to us all not too long ago called Wawasan 2020. And I was just wondering about your thoughts on how far along do you think we've come into moving towards that goal, and how much more work do you think we need to put into within the next 6 years to achieve that goal, and maybe if we need to do anything differently. Thank you.
Firstly, let me repeat what Vision 2020 means. By 2020, we want to be a fully developed country in our own mold. It's not going to be like England or America or anything, but in our own mold. Now this gives rise to different interpretations. Some people very simplistically define being a developed country as having per capita income of $12,000 or $16,000 or whatever, and a GDP which is high. That is not enough to qualify us to become a developed country. If you go by that figure, then the most developed country would be Saudi Arabia. But you know, Saudi Arabia is not regarded as a developed country. To be a developed country, to me, It's not only about getting per capita income that is high, but also the sophistication of each society. We must have industries. We must have intellectuals. We must have facilities. Our infrastructure must be superb. All these things we must have before we qualify to become a fully developed country. I'm sorry to say, but the way we are going, we are focusing only on the per capita income. And therefore we say, by the year 2018, we would become a fully developed country. It is not. Because if you base on per capita income, we will not even be in the ranks of Saudi Arabia. We are very poor. So I hate to say this, but I think by 2020, we may not achieve the status of a fully developed country. Thank you.
Lady on my left.
Assalamualaikum. My name is Atika. I'm from University of Manchester. I remember being told by my history teacher how Malaysia is one of the few countries who achieve independence without the need to share a single blood. And that shows how much understanding and tolerance that we have between our forefathers. And it saddens me to see how far we have digressed from the fundamental values that this nation has been built upon. So in your opinion, how do we go back to that value? And yeah, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we became independent without having to fight a war. Lots of people say this is half-baked independence. You didn't fight a war. But if you fight a war, you know what will happen? The leaders in the fight, the sergeants and the corporals who fight the war, when they became independent, they want to be the governors and the prime ministers because they fought the war. But we didn't fight the war, and as a result, senior civil servants led the country, and they knew what they were doing. So we were fortunate in that we did not fight a war, but we achieved independence through negotiation. These things are not very well understood by the present generation. If you understand how well we did, I'm quite sure you will be guided as to what you need to do. We became independent because Malays, Chinese, and Indians teamed up together and agreed to share Malaysia, and therefore we became independent. But some people, of course, would not like to seize power for themselves alone, for the ethnic groups alone. And because of that, today we find that we are not as united as we were at the beginning, and also that racism has, invaded our minds to the extent that we cannot really work together. I'm sorry these things happen, but if you learn the history of the struggle for independence and the way we built our country after independence, then I think we can return to the state of affairs before the present conflicts, racial conflicts occurred in Malaysia. Thank you.
All right, thank you guys. We have no time for questions left. I'm very sorry. We're on a very strict schedule, but I just want to request that everyone give a round of applause to both lines people. Thank you very much. We will now proceed with the token appreciation.
Thank you all for your questions, and thank you very much to Yang Amat Berbahagia Tun Dr. Mahathir for his wisdom and his insight. We'd like to invite Sharul Hamdan, Chairman of UKAC, to present a token of appreciation to Tun Dr. Mahathir. Disagree with him a lot, but I want a picture with him.
We would like to announce the departure of Yang Amat Berbahagia Tun Dr. Mahathir, who will now proceed to the press conference room, and we ask the members of the audience to remain seated.
Or standing.
Or standing.
Surprise performance. What now?
Where is he? Where is he?
What do you do? I don't know.
Where is he?
I don't know what to do.
Where is he?
He's shouting. What do you do? Oh, is he there? Is he there? I don't see him.
I don't know. Where is he?
I'm not sure what we do. Chop, chop, chop.
We hope that everyone could remain seated, please. So ladies and gentlemen, we will now have a short break for Asar prayers, and we hope that everyone will come back and be seated by 3:50 p.m. Thank you. Don't forget about the social media contest.
Ladies and gentlemen, just a quick reminder that the PAN social media contest is still on. Please submit your entries by the end of the day if you want to stand in the running for a Kindle, yes.